Welcome to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. Like any good marriage, we will debate, evaluate, and sometimes quarrel about how privacy and security impact business in the 21st century.
Hi, Jodi Daniels here. I'm the founder and CEO of Red Clover Advisors, a certified women's privacy consultancy. I'm a privacy consultant and certified informational privacy professional, providing practical privacy advice to overwhelmed companies.
Hello, Justin Daniels here. I am a corporate M&A and tech transactions partner at the law firm Baker Donaldson. I am passionate about helping companies solve complex cyber and privacy challenges during the life cycle of their business. I am the cyber quarterback helping clients design and implement cyber plans, as well as help them manage and recover from data breaches.
And this episode is brought to you by Red Clover Advisors. We help companies to comply with data privacy laws and establish customer trust so that they can grow and nurture integrity. We work with companies in a variety of fields, including technology, e-commerce, professional services, and digital media. In short, we use data privacy to transform the way companies do business. Together, we're creating a future where there is greater trust between companies and consumers. To learn more and to check out our new best-selling book, Data Reimagined, Building Trust One Bite at a Time, visit redcloveradvisors.com. We have a special episode today.
Yes, today is Monday. How often do we record on Monday?
Not very often. Only special people come on Monday.
I see. Well, we're into this special topic today, but I guess for our listeners, today's episode is a really important one for Jodi and I because our podcast really wants to promote public service in that we really want to have guests on who can educate our audience about how to keep your children safe online and with their iPhone and other things like that. Because Jodi and I, as parents, grapple with these issues every day, and there's no easy solution, and they're really complex and challenging. And so with that, Jodi, you want to introduce our guest today?
I do. We have a very special guest. We have Officer Gomez, who works for the Boise County Sheriff's Office in Idaho City, Idaho. He currently works as the school resource officer at Idaho City High School. He uses his background in electronics engineering together with his experience in schools to educate parents on the dangers and effects of social media on our kids. Officer Gomez teaches parents on bullying, sexting, cell phone applications, and so much more. Everyone needs to grab a pen and paper and your listening ears as we dive into everything that we need to know. And be sure to also follow Officer Gomez on your for sure, Facebook. And I'm sure throughout the episode, we'll talk about more where you can get information. He is a wealth of knowledge, and we're so excited to have you here. Every parent Facebook group I am in always references follow Officer Gomez. And so I'm truly delighted to have you here with us today.
Thanks for having me, and I'm glad to be here.
So I have to start with, how did you get here? But, how did your background from electronics engineering morph into this incredible expert in digital safety?
So digital safety, digital awareness, digital citizenship, all those apply there. So from an engineer, I saw a job ad in 2009 for a police department that was hiring, and I just on a whim, hey, I'm going to change my life. I became a police officer, of which I was just regular nighttime patrol for 3 years. Then I became a school resource officer. In 2011, 2012, I became a resource officer and started walking the halls of schools. And what I noticed is that everything was on social media. And whether it's bullying, drugs, abuse, neglect, suicidal, everything was on social media. So I needed to learn social media in order to understand the kids I was working with. Through some fake accounts and a lot of talking to kids, I learned their language. I learned what was important to them. I learned to see what they were seeing. I could stop fights before they were happening. I became one of the best people at finding runaways through using my fake accounts. And then I started arresting predators who were coming to my community to have sex with 13-year-old kids. So as I started getting all this information, I just started giving little parent nights. I started teaching kids. And, 12 years later, here I am, teaching a lot of kids, teaching parents, teaching law enforcement. And through my Facebook page, I learn as much as I give out. So as even though I give out a lot of information, I get lots of private messages or comments where I learn a great deal of information and try and parse that information and give people what's important.
So, Officer Gomez, to kind of begin our conversation, I know Jodi and I, as parents of two young daughters, we think we understand our kids on one level, but we don't see them in school every day like you see these kids. And so I'd love to just get your perspective on what do you think parents misunderstand the most about their kids in this current digital age?
Parents don't understand that kids are fully engulfed in the digital social media age. As soon as they get a smartphone, even before they get a smartphone, they're huddled around other people's phones. But at school, everything becomes about social media. How many likes, how many shares, who likes this person, who's going to fight this. Everything becomes about social media. Parents don't understand that there are a million predators just waiting for parents to give their kids cell phones. It's like, hey, as soon as you give your kid a cell phone, bing, 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 you hook them up to millions of people whose main goal in life is to groom and prey on your children. And parents think that their parental authority or parental values is going to overcome this, and it is definitely not.
When a parent gives a child a cell phone, they may or may not give them access to a social media account. Can you share a little bit based on your experience? Do the kids who don't have social media accounts, are they still at risk? Are they still exposed to these types of things versus, the kids who really early on have social media accounts? And the follow-on question to that is there an age that you think is appropriate for a social media account?
All right. So first of all, I would say appropriate for social media, there's the requirement by the FCC of 13 years old, which a lot of people don't abide by. I would argue that 16 is a way better age because you've gotten past a very much, kids are very vulnerable between, 12 and 15. So 16, when you start driving, is better. Best is 18, because then at least you've given your kid a chance at outdoor stuff, at other things, at seeing the world opportunities, right? Where I see parents where one year I have a sixth grader who's bringing a guitar or a ukulele to school all the time. As soon as they get a phone, that stops. They stop drawing, they stop music, they stop sports, they stop everything as soon as they get their social media. And parents that give a kid a phone without social media, the kids are still involved in social media, but a lot of times those come with conversations of, why are you not getting social media like all the other kids? And it's those conversations that are more important than actually not giving the social media. And it's like, hey, here, I'm giving you this cell phone. This is so you can contact us. This is so this, and this. I'm not giving you social media because I care about you. I'm your parent. I care about your safety. And there's going to be time for social media later. But here we go. So I do like, and I understand parents do want to know where their kids are at. There's lots of safety reasons. There's lots of other reasons for kids to have communication with parents, but not for them to have social media.
That makes sense.
Well, that was the thing I wanted to ask you, Officer Gomez, is we tried to wait longer to give our child a phone. And the way that we decided we had to do it was when she started going to sports and other recreation from a safety perspective. And I guess the thing I want to ask you about, just being candid with our audience, is it is hard as a parent to look at the things that are going on in schools with school shootings and all these other things. And how do you not want your child to have a phone in some way to communicate if, God forbid, there's some type of situation? But you make a great point of, what is that kid doing who doesn't have social media? Isn't he or she who doesn't have it feeling pressure from their friends to, hey, why don't you have social media? What's wrong with you? And that's a way of feeling like you don't fit in, which has its own set of issues.
Yes, and not only do the kids feel pressure, but the parents feel pressure as well, right? It's hard to have your parent, hey, my kid is the only kid in fifth grade without Snapchat. It is a pressure, and it's a peer pressure just like everything else, and it's hard for parents not to give in. The school issue always comes up. Hey, if there's a school shooting. Now, I study school shootings. I do lockdowns at the school. And I can tell you that the phone in an actual school shooting is actually more dangerous to have than anything else, because you have kids who are crying and calling their parents, and their parents, when you hear your kid crying, it's a horrible event. Now you want to come to the school, come through police lines and put yourself in more danger, put the kids in danger. Well, at the same time, kids need to be quiet while there's an active event going on. And they can't be quiet if everybody's trying to text and you hear binging phones and all kinds of things that are happening at the school. That being said, it's still a strong, I need to know what my kid is doing. So watches that give out your location, that give out information. You can have safe phones that give out minimal information. But the full-on phone with no restricted access at school is a terrible idea, and it really restricts education, as well as causes some safety issues for a lot of other reasons. I tell parents, hey, look, you're introducing a host of safety issues to combat one not likely to happen issue.
Oh, we were both excited to say something at the same time.
I defer to my lovely co-host.
Oh, isn't that so nice? I think before we kind of keep diving into some of the tactics, you mentioned also family values. And in several of your posts, you talk a lot about setting family values. Can you share more about why that is so important in today's social media age, and maybe how parents could get started doing that?
So in my experience, kids are very malleable to outside influences. They're very malleable to parenting. Parents just have to be there to show your parenting skills, to set an example of what your family values are. If you don't do this, then what they do is they pick this up from all their friends and all of social media. So then when I encounter kids in 10th, 11th grade, and they're having a really hard time with boyfriends, girlfriends, school, jobs, whatever, I ask them, hey, what are your family values? And if you don't have a strong set of family values, you are going to fall prey to or fall victim to whatever comes your way. And for one example, I had a young lady come into my office crying that all she got was poor boyfriends, that just they were poor choices, not that they were poor choice of boyfriends who, it didn't work out and it was horrible. And I said, hey, what are you worth? And she didn't know. I mean, she had no idea what the question meant. And I'm like, if you don't know what you're worth, then nobody else can figure out your worth either. But you've got to stand for something. And what I find is when I ask kids what their values are, they refer back to social media. Hey, I have 3 viral videos. I believe in abortion. I don't believe in CRT, whatever the hot topic, propaganda from social media and news stations. That's what kids end up being worth. And that's not worth anything. So then what ends up happening is kids end up being worth their body parts. And if you're a boy, you end up being worth whatever violence you can cause on somebody or whatever video games you can play, whatever thing you can do to garner the most likes on social media is what you're worth. And that's a terrible thing to be worth.
That's a very interesting perspective. I hadn't thought of that before.
Great. So, as we learn more, with your work in high school, so, as kids get older, their friend group becomes more and more important, be it in school or maybe on social media. So I'd love to get your thoughts about how do parents straddle the line between kids have to live and learn life and have experiences that, your parents aren't necessarily a part of, but on the other hand, we want to be able to monitor them for signs of trouble, given how quickly kids grow up with TikTok and Snapchat. And just, Officer Gomez, to put a fine point on it, our daughter came to us wanting to be on, having TikTok and be on there. And I was like, you realize your mother and father and privacy and cybersecurity. So that idea is dead on arrival. But yet, again, she felt pressure because other people weren't. But would love to, what do we do as parents? How do we straddle this line? It's tough.
So this is where education at an early age starts kicking in. Hey, these are our family values. This is what we believe in. And they are going to be a part of some kind of social media outreach, no matter what, at some point. So, when they start turning 16, hey, these are the things that are okay. These are things that are not okay. This is what our family believes in. This is what they don't believe in, right? And then you have to have some candid conversations about what people are going to do on the other end, on the receiving end. And so, for example, I call parents up and I say, hey, your daughter's naked photo is being shared all over the school. You should come into the school so we can talk about it. And so then I talk to the parents. I was like, hey, have you had a candid conversation about sending nude photos with your daughter? And they say they have, but they have not. So I say, hey, when we go in there, do you give me permission to be very candid? I'll tell you the kind of conversation, or I'll show you the conversations that you should be having. And so here's a 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old girl who has sent out her nude photo. Now the whole school is going to share it for the rest of her high school career. But you have to have the conversations like, hey, daughter or son, what do you think the stranger that gets a hold of this picture is going to do, especially if they get this with your Facebook profile, with your Instagram profile? They know where you go to school. They know where you work, right? And I talk to them very candidly. I say, look, they are going to masturbate to your picture. They're going to come to your work and see you and then go do that again. And it's going to be shared with all kinds of creepers who might come to the school. You might bring kids, you might bring strangers to the school to put other kids in danger. But we have to have these candid conversations. Same thing with, okay, a girl puts a TikTok video, let's say the plank challenge. The plank challenge it started off as a cutesy thing. You do the plank, you go from push-up position to plank position to push-up position to the beat of the music. Very innocent. Well, now if a girl wears a loose shirt, you see right down her shirt, her likes go from 10 to 100,000 with one move, basically wearing a loose-fitting shirt, so you look right down her shirt. Why are people saving that video? Why are they liking it? Why are 100,000 adult men liking this video when they should be saying, hey, modesty, you need to have some privacy with your body. You should not be with your body parts. So you need to teach early on. And then as they get 15, 16, you got to let them go on their own. You've taught them what you're going to teach them. You're going to teach them very little from 16 to 18. You're basically going to guide them. Right? It should be like a dry test run. Hey, let's flap our wings. Let's see what you're going to do. And let's try and keep the mistakes small. They're going to make some mistakes, but let's keep them small. Let's learn, let's show, let's teach, let's set the example. And at some point you do have to let them go. And it's better that you start doing dry runs rather than at 18 here, push them out and you're on your own.
So Officer Gomez, it sounds like what you're saying is, and I'll just use Jodi and I as an example for our listeners. So we have one of our kids is 12, 13, and we've had conversations about why you don't do some of these things. So is it really sitting down with your child and I guess having some uncomfortable conversations that when Jodi and I grew up, I didn't think about as much at this age, but it sounds like with social media, we might have to get and sit down with our child one night. She's not going to like it and think we're being overprotective, crazy people, and walk her through some of the scenarios, like with the push-ups, with the pictures, and say, you understand if you do this, these are the consequences and why you can't let your friends or whoever persuade you that this is somehow a good idea.
Yes, with the exception of not one time, a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Right. I always liken the conversation to texting and driving. When we have a local youth of any kind at any school where I've had, you get a local youth that dies of texting and driving. I go to the school, hey, this texting and driving is bad. Somebody died. Most of the kids are going to go home that night, not text and drive. But what they see as soon as they get on the road is they see millions of adults who are texting and driving. So what message are they really getting is, okay, it's okay to text and drive. Officer Gomez is just one off and not wanting us to text and drive. Same thing they're going to get from a parental conversation. Hey, if you have a parental conversation once about sex, and then they see on TikTok, on Instagram, on Snapchat that, hey, all these things are sexual, and they see it on television, right? What kind of television shows can you watch without being sexualized? Not many. And the quote I always tell parents is, kids are being sexualized by social media at NASCAR speeds while parents are having go-kart conversations.
Well, one other thing I wanted to ask you on this kind of topic, what kind of behaviors do parents need to be modeling when it comes to social media and whatnot? Because you made a really good point about how the kids, okay, you tell them and then they go home and they watch the road and the parents are texting, or I'm sure you've been out to dinner and you see a family of 4 and everybody's on their device, not talking. What do we as parents should be thinking about and how we're modeling behavior as it relates to phones and social media?
So exactly as you said, when you go to dinner, let's put down the phones. And this should be part of your family values. Hey, at dinners, we don't have phones. On Sundays, we have an hour, a couple hours where we're a family. We're not going to have our phones distracting us. You model this and you model it with other families and you share it, then kids are going to know, hey, look, this is important to my parents. Here's the big one is, when you come upon a Facebook thing that you don't agree with, maybe state your opinion and move on with your life. Don't let it eat you up. Whereas I see lots of adults who go all in on some conversations that aren't even that important, but they get so involved. Guess what? You're teaching your kid to be that same way, right? How can you be offended by somebody around the world who you have nothing to do with, yet you'll go all in on a Facebook argument? Well, kids are going to do the same thing, and they're going to feel victimized by a stranger on a computer millions of miles away that shouldn't matter to them at all. It should be, hey, I control my own thoughts and emotions, and I'm moving on. And that's a question I ask kids all the time. Who controls your thoughts and emotions? And they always say, I do. I say, well, you went home crying because somebody put something on Facebook yesterday. Are you really controlling your thoughts and emotions? No.
Yeah, I love that one. I mean, I don't love that one, but it was a really good example. The argument I get, and I see people comment all the time about parents, is from a social media perspective, they'll control it. They'll say, no, it has private settings. Only certain friends are allowed in, and they feel safer by that. And at the same time, I know more, and I'd like for you to be able to share why is that not super safe? That's still good. It's great that you might have that control, but why is that not enough?
All right. So kids spend, 10, 15 hours on their cell phones every day. Whether parents like it or not, that's what happens. They are professionals at this. They share every hack and workaround there is for every platform there is. So they can get around every parental monitoring. Some of the phones that are specialty safe phones are way better at this, but kids still get around those. I help monitor the Go Guardian system at our school for the Chromebooks. And I can tell you that I play whack-a-mole every day. We lock it down, the kids get around it by hundreds of ways. So you are not going to make your kid, or you are not going to put any kind of software on your phone that's going to make it safe for your kid. Now, that being said, I still highly advise you put that software on your kid's phone because it shows your kid that that's important to you, right? It's like, hey, this is important to my parents, even if I'm kind of going around it because I'm addicted to screen time. I still know it's important to parents, along with conversations weekly, daily. Talk to kids. I always use headlines. Hey, this kid got in trouble. Why do you think they got in trouble? What went wrong? Right now, boys sending their penis pictures to good-looking girls that contact them. Every kid thinks they're not going to fall victim to some stranger sending them a nudie picture and them sending one back. But yet, thousands of kids are falling for it. Why is that? You have those conversations with your kids. You cannot put any kind of software on a regular cell phone that's going to make it safe. The kids will find a workaround all the time. So people don't understand what that means. For example, if you tell your kid's phone to go to sleep at 9 o'clock and not wake up till 7, and you feel pretty comfortable with that, you let them have it in their room. Number one, they are going to change the time zone on it all night long until morning time. Number two, they can use it at a hotspot, even if it's locked down. They have a secondary device, they hotspot through their phone, which to say, all this monitoring software is gone. Number three, if it's like Android, they can start in safe mode and bypass everything, and parents have no idea. And that's just three of hundreds and hundreds of ways for kids to get around the monitoring software.
Want a technology change? Clearly, we should just hire all the kids.
I don't know if I want to laugh or I should go downstairs and find some.
I told you I was very excited and very nervous about this episode because I knew we were going to learn some very uncomfortable truths.
No, I think I've already heard some things that you and I will have to discuss about changes we need to make. But Officer Gomez, in preparing for our conversation, I read a bunch of the Facebook posts, and you posted a particular one that I wanted to talk about, where it was, you posted a note from a kid that says, quote, "Taking away what I love doesn't motivate me. It leaves me feeling powerless," end quote. My question is, how does a parent navigate this reaction and also trying to set boundaries with phones or bedtimes that kids don't like or want, as you just pointed out? What do Jodi and I do?
So that is a quote you hear lots with kids trying to control their parents. They use that one. And the second one is, if I don't have my cell phone friends, I will kill myself. Right. And kids, if you get this reaction, that's like, you need to move up to DEFCON 4 as far as we need to give our kids some other things to be worth than just their cell phone. Fortnite is another one, right? If a kid says, hey, look, the only thing I like in my life is playing Fortnite with my friends. That's it. I don't like anything else. This is a message to parents. We need to get out and do some other things. We need to go meet other kids. We need to go do some outside activities. We need to go to church youth group. We need to put them in softball. A great activity, family building, pick a sports team, get some swag, and root for them as a family. Doesn't matter what it is, doesn't matter what level. And then you can invite other families. Hey, we'd like to invite you over. Seahawks are playing the Chargers. We're Seahawks fans. You can be whoever you want, but we do no cell phones. We'll have good food. We'll have good conversation. Come on over. That's how you start family building, and you start community building as well. But that's definitely something you should, consider. Hey, is my kid really thinking that they are only worth their social media friends? Is my kid really thinking that their cell phone is everything they have to live for?
You shared about how early on you created some fake accounts, and then how predators are really good at finding these kinds of kids. Can you share a little bit about how they're really good? Again, if you kind of think about the idea of it being some type of private network, how do they penetrate through that? And then what can parents do? How can they try and either monitor their devices, or teach the kids clues that this is a fake account or a bad person?
Yeah, so when I started arresting actual predators who were coming to meet me at parks thinking they were actually going to have sex with people, when I look at all their information, I get subpoenas for their Facebook accounts, for their Roblox accounts, and I see 60-year-olds who make a Roblox account of an 8-year-old to specifically target a 7-year-old. They're just a little bit older. And then the first thing they do is they make an emotional connection. So they start talking to the kid, and I'm like, they say, hey, I'm really sad my grandma died. And then the kid says, oh, I'm so sorry your grandma died. So then they start an emotional connection. As soon as they get the emotional connection going, then pretty soon they say, hey, your parents don't understand you like I do. You're super special. You're this, that, and the other, whatever they use. They develop an emotional connection first. Then they start basically alienating them from their families and creating a false reality that the kid doesn't know. This is what they see. And if this predator is spending more time with your kids than you are, that's a problem, right? So when I tell parents, hey, look at the battery used for yesterday on your kid's phone, and it's 12 hours. Okay, did you spend 12 hours with your kid yesterday? Probably not. That's how much time they are getting values from a third-party source, which isn't parents. So we got to have some family time in there to teach what's important to you guys, or else they're going to get it from strangers who have a totally different agenda.
I guess it's not only family time, but it's got to be family time that's specifically away from the electronics, where the parents put down the phone too. Because I know I'm a
phoneaholic.
I work. When you work and you have customers that expect quick responses, there's what you're saying is these are the consequences. And as parents, either we set boundaries or we're going to have some really significant consequences because our children see that. And
are there any of the tools out there that you might recommend, or other ways of how parents could monitor or review or try and catch some of those kinds of conversations so that they don't have a child go and fall for it and meet someone in a park when it's actually a real person and not an officer?
So I really like the specialty phones. Can I say what they are?
Sure.
Yeah, so you have Gab Wireless, Bark Phone, TrueMe, Light Phone, Pinwheel. Those are all far safer than a regular phone. I know a lot of parents think that they are smart enough to make a regular phone like those phones, but they are not. As far as catching a kid conversing, there's no way that you can see everything they're doing or see everybody they're talking to. You're not going to catch it. So you're going to have to set your kid up to figure this out on their own. Same thing with crossing the road. Can you monitor your kid on every road they're going to cross? No. But you can reinforce every time you're out with your kid to look both ways when they're crossing the road. If you see something, hey, take a few steps back and wait. Right? So you teach your kid to cross the road. You teach your kid to recognize predators and predatory behavior and tell them, hey, look, save your friends as well. I can't tell you how many kids I've had contact me, whether it's be in my office or on social media, and say, a friend of theirs is in trouble, they recognize it because of this, this, and this, and I'm able to save a kid from going down a crazy path.
Are there any of those? You had just kind of mentioned how that one child was able to recognize some signs. Are there any common signs that might be helpful for a parent to be able to communicate to their child?
So when you see a big change in your kids, now teenagers change a lot anyways, right? That's quite normal. But if you see something extraordinary, like, hey, they took a deep dive off the edge in grades or attitude or hygiene or sleep, then it's time to start looking into further using your parental detective skills to kind of figure out what's wrong with your child. Start having conversations, right? In our house, when we take in a lot of high-risk teens, we call them bonus kids. They're just drop-offs. And we have tribal council every Friday night. But any family member can call a tribal council any night. And that's where we sit in the living room. We all face each other. We have great conversations. And friends are always invited into that circle of conversations because they're conversations that are good for everybody. And a lot of times we do have friends that come in on very awkward conversations, but they're good for everybody because then they know how to communicate with others, right? And when you're talking about sex, it is very uncomfortable at first, but the more you have it, the better you get at it. And the more of those conversations you have, then your child can then have those conversations with their partners before they have sex or before they do something that's going to get out of control.
Thank you for sharing.
So the root cause of this or whatnot, I guess, screen time, it seems overall, is having a real detrimental impact on kids. Jodi and I work in tech industries, a variety of them. Yet the big tech business model is all about keeping people online all the time. And I'm sure you've been seeing that now we're talking about artificial intelligence, the latest technology, which seems to weaponize all this. We have congressional leaders who are all polarized and don't really think about these issues. How do we change this cycle? Because the business model is they want these kids online looking at stuff all the time to sell them ads and other stuff. But at the same time, it's also creating all the stuff we've just discussed in our conversation today. Well, what can we do as parents or people to change this vicious cycle?
Outside activities and family activities. That's it. So I live in a very rural area, and I have some families that still have no running water and no electricity, even with 4 feet of snow on the ground. Well, when I go out to some of these houses, some of them are homeschooled, and I go there and an outsider looking in would see it's like, hey, that's a scary place. We should take their kids. We should put them in foster care because they're not being cared for properly. But if you go up to the house and you knock and you talk to these kids, they're dirty. They have mud under their fingernails. They have scrapes and bruises. But all that dirt and all the scrapes and bruises, those are all adventures and outside things that they're using their imagination for. They know how to camp. They know how to fish. They know how to talk to each other. They know how to enjoy a life. So when they get to be 18 and 20 and somebody says something they don't like on Facebook, it's like, that's not their life. That's just a small part. Whereas right now, social media is becoming everything to kids, so that when somebody does say something or they post something that nobody likes, they melt down. And we see this in adults every day. We see this in news agencies. We see this where you have adults who everything they're worth is on social media. And one little thing melts them down to nothing. Whereas my kids that grow up with no social media till they're 18 and beyond, that they realize that screen time is just a small bit of what they do in their life. They can go motorcycling, they can go hiking, they can go canoeing, they can go boating. All these other things, real relationships, real connections are going to be what's important.
We've talked a lot about family values, conversation, and we always ask every guest, what's your best privacy or security tip? And we've talked a lot about those. What I would love is if you could share maybe one or two things we haven't talked about yet that parents listening could do to try and help protect their kids who might live in a more urban area and their kids are going to be glued to their devices. Or at least as of now, they're glued until they listen to this episode.
So one of the biggest things is no electronics in bedrooms, no Xbox, no anything in bedrooms. And I know kids always talk to parents and, I need the only alarm clock that works for me is my iPhone. Right? That's what they try and sell it on. No devices in bedrooms because that just causes too much. There's too much temptation there. Number two is people always ask me, well, how do you know if somebody's real or fake? And I said, look, the only way you know is touching them on their shoulder. You can't tell by a live. You can't tell by how many friends you have in common. You have to touch them on their shoulder. Then the kind of number third that goes with that is 200 friends or less on any given platform. So Instagram, Facebook, whatever it is, 200 friends or less. If you have more than 200 friends, people become anonymous and they say things they wouldn't say in real life. But also, if there's a problem and you have 200 friends, it's easy to track down. If you have 5,000 friends, it's hard to track down. And I can track down a problem today and I'll have 3 more problems tomorrow, right? Because with 5,000 friends, no matter what you say, somebody's going to be hurt and cause issues with it.
That's an interesting number. I hadn't thought of that before. Good number. 200 friends. I like it.
Right. Well,
What?
no.
You're
I guess
speechless.
I guess, Officer Gomez, when I hear the word friend, my definition of friend is someone that I can call at 3 a.m. in the morning. They pick up my phone and they're going to help me. I have 4 of those. I guess I just struggle sometimes as to what the definition of friend has become, to me, modified to a point where it's meaningless. When we talk about 200 friends on Facebook, we're really talking about acquaintances, because the people who are your friends, if you're lucky in life, you get maybe 4 or 5 of those.
But if you're a kid, you have all those classmates that may or may not be really good friends across multiple. You think about if you do a sport, if you do any kind of extracurricular activity, plus a couple different grades, if you're in a youth event of any kinds, that 200 actually could add up really quick.
Okay. Fair enough.
It does. I agree that the friend, that's a perfect thing for families to talk about. Hey, what's a friend? What's an acquaintance? And I would argue that you got 5,000 friends. Some of those aren't even acquaintances. You don't know them. They wouldn't know you. If you walk by each other on the street, they would have no idea. Right. But I always tell the kids, hey, look, my true friends, I will give them my bank card and the keys to my car and the keys to my house and not worry about it one little bit.
Fair point. Those are good examples. And you're right. There's different kinds of people.
So, Officer Gomez, we've covered a lot of topics, but we always want to know, when you're not helping families and kids and protect them in this online world, what do you like to do for fun?
So I do a lot of dirt biking and motorcycling with my wife. We do a lot of outdoors things. We're actually very lucky. We only have Wi-Fi within about a mile of our town, and then you're done. You don't have cell service. You don't have Wi-Fi. So it's easy to get out of Wi-Fi. So we like to do that. We like to go do live music. We love to listen to live music. One of the things I do with kids, I do music with them. I know how to play ukulele, guitar, and piano. And one of the local bars in town, anytime I want to bring a student, they will clear the floor and give them a audience there of whoever's there. They'll put a tip jar out and they can all go play. And sometimes I'll go play with them and enjoy music. Drama, sports is some of the things that saves some of the kids who have the hardest lives in my sphere of influence. So I always like schools to beef up their music program, their drama program, and their sports programs, because when kids have really hard home lives, they are able to escape using those things.
Big arts fan over here, and it's very frustrating. That might be an entire other conversation where we see so many arts programs cut. They really are saving graces for people all over the world. Officer Gomez, if people would like to learn more and continue to learn from you, where can they go?
So you can go to my Facebook page, which I think is Deputy Gomez, or they can go to my YouTube, which is Officer Gomez. I do have a little bit of Instagram, which is Officer Gomez, all one word. If you type in Officer Gomez in a Google search of any kind, I should come up. On my YouTube channel, I've been putting little bits and pieces of my classes that I give to kids and to parents. So you can get just little pieces. You can watch it with your kids, and as soon as it's done, you have the conversation. Hey, Officer Gomez talked about this. Officer Gomez talked about that. What do we think? Here's what we think as a family. If you ask your kid too much, what do they think? They're going to say, I don't know. So you kind of lead that conversation a bit. Right?
Common answer to everything. I don't know.
Yep, I don't know.
Well, thank you again for coming today to share these very important tips. I hope everyone listening grabbed your pen and paper, and be sure to check out all those very informative channels. So thank you so very much.
Well, thanks for having me, and let me know if I can ever be of assistance any other time.
Thanks for listening to the She Said Privacy, He Said Security podcast. If you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes and check us out on LinkedIn. See you next time.